I am Laura Marcu, and I have the opportunity to present to this Lumen conference research that I prepare with my colleague Nichita Vasile Camelia on the subject of the parents-pupil-teacher relationship and its role in preventing human trafficking among high school pupils. The plan of our presentation concerns, first of all, a brief introduction about the reason why we choose to develop this research. Then briefly explanation about the methodology, and then the explanation of each item that we analyzed during our research. At the end, we present the main conclusion of the research. So regarding the reason of our research, we want to mention that if we look to the national statistic of Romania, presented by the agency involved in the fight against the human trafficking, we can observe that the category which are the most vulnerable to human trafficking are the women, the people who live in rural areas, and the people under 19 years old. That's why we decide to realize research among teenagers. And we split this teenager into category in order to compare the situation of each category. The objective of our study was to see if they are a relationship of communication and also a relationship of affection and emotional support between pupil on one side and parents and teachers on the other side. That kind of relationship that can contribute to the prevention of human trafficking. We take into account 4 items and we create 4 hypotheses based on these items. And each item was analyzed according to 4 influence variables using the chi-square test to evaluate the statistical significance of the influence. The statistical population was the pupils of high school in one county of Romania, the county of Dambovita. The final sample was of 441 persons, and the selection of this person was by the cluster method. The survey was realized in spring this year, in 2022. And now I will present the result of our research by each item analyzed. The first item concerned the parents-pupils communication regarding the adolescents' friends. In that case, the main question was if the parents asked the adolescent about their friends. As we can see, the most of the parents have the opportunity to meet the adolescent friends, or at least to talk about the friends. We have also some situation of people that don't discuss at all about the friends with their parents, or the situation when the parents don't ask about the friends, and this is a risky situation. If we look by subcategory, we can see that the communication relationship is better in the case of adolescents who live in rural area, in case of girls and young people aged among between 14 and 16 years, and the communication is weaker in case of the adolescent who live in urban area, boys, and young people aged between 16 and 18 years old. Then, if we apply the chi-square test, by the 4 variables of influence that we take into account, we observe that the influence is significant only in case of the gender of respondent, and the other 3 variable doesn't have a statistical significant influence, even if we observe some difference among the answers. The second item concerned the trusted person for the adolescent. In that case, the main question was about the person who asked in case of a critical situation, no way solution situation. We can see that about 66% of the pupils indicate parent, teacher, or tutor as a person who is important and people ask for help in a critical situation. The second category indicated are friends, and we have also teenagers that mention I wouldn't ask for help because I consider that I can handle myself, or even people that have no one to ask for help, and these 2 situations are risky for the human trafficking. By subcategory, we observe that the relationship of trust with parents and teachers is stronger in the case of rural teenagers, in case of girls and pupils aged between 14 and 16 years, and weaker in urban teenagers, boys, pupils aged between 16 and 18 years. Also, we observe that teenagers who have studied in urban high school tend to develop a better relationship of trust with parents and teachers compared to those who study in rural high school. If we apply the chi-square test for this item, we observe that high school location has a significant statistical influence. Resident of the respondent has a slightly significant statistical influence, while the other 2 category of variable doesn't have a statistical influence, even if we observe some difference among the answers of the respondent. The first item concerned the parents' interest in the situation of the school situation of the adolescent. The school situation meaning the grade, the absence, the scholar activities, and also the extra curricular activities. In that case, we use a scale, a semantic differential scale, and we ask the pupils to say to which extent the parents are interested in the school situation of in their school situation. And the results show that most of the parents are interested in an average extent or in a large extent to the school situation of their children. Nevertheless, they are 18% of children who mentioned that parents are not at all interested or are interested in a small extent. This is also a risky situation. There are differences by subcategory that we calculated as a score, because this semantic differential allowed us to calculate a score. And we can see in this chart the score by subcategory. And the last column indicates the overall score of 3.27, which means slightly above average score, because the scale was from 1 to 4. 4 means large extent, and 1 means not at all. So the average score of 3.27 indicate the average score of interest. And we can see that in case of female gender, urban high school and people between 14 and 16 years old, the score is higher than the overall score. But if we apply the chi-square test, only in case of high school location, we have a slightly significant statistical influence, while the other three variable has not a statistical influence, despite the difference that we can see in the score. Finally, the fourth item concerns the emotional support relationship. In that case, the main question was about the source of information that adolescents use in case of a need of specific information in case of a special situation. The chart that you can see indicates that the main source of information is internet. In the second place is the group of friends, and only in the third place are the parents, and fourth place the teaching staff, which means tutor, normal teachers, or high school psychologists. By subcategory, those who request help from teachers or parents live in rural area belong to female category and are aged between 14 and 16 years old. With the mention that in the case of girls, the group of friends is more important than in the case of boys, and this is a risky factor because, as we can see in the statistical report, friends could be a person who are interested in human trafficking. If we apply the chi-square test in a case of this item, we observe that the residence of respondent and the sex of respondent are slightly significant from the statistical point of view, while the other two variables are not significant, even if we have some difference among the answers. In conclusion, we observed positive result and risky situation. The main positive result that we mentioned here is that most of the pupils have a relationship of communication and emotional support with parents and with teachers, and this relationship is effective when they face to borderline situation. Also, we observe that even if there are some difference by subcategory, these differences are not statistically significant, except to a small extent, and that helps us to think to a program who cover all the category in the same time program regarding the prevention of human trafficking. The most potential risk, the most important that we observe are, first of all, the fact that an important percent of pupils communicate with their parents occasionally or not at all about their friends. And the friends, as I say, represent a risky situation, as it was mentioned by the National Agency of Fight Against the Human Trafficking. Another potential of risk is that even if 66% of the teenagers would turn to their parents or teachers in a hopeless situation, we still have 35 teenagers who prefer friends and 15% who has no one to turn to, and this is a risky situation. And also, the group of friends is a source of information even more important than parents or teachers, being overtaken only by the information provided by the internet. And the risk is, who are these friends? As solution, we say that it is important, first of all, to continue the awareness campaign among teenagers regarding the risk of human trafficking, because we mentioned even in the introduction of our article that it is important to highlight the risk of these friends, considered friends by the teenagers. Another proposition is to develop a stronger communication between teachers and pupils, because this relation can help pupils not only in the educational process, but also in the personal and social orientation, as the psychological and pedagogical research highlight, and we mentioned this issue in the literature review of our article. And also we have as proposition to improve the adolescent parents' communication through, for example, awareness campaign of the importance of the communication and emotional support. For example, concerning the friends of adolescent, concerning the school situation and the risk of grow up. And the other possible activity is to involve parents in action organized at the school level. This being a proposition highlighted by the pedagogical and psychological research in this field. Thank you very much for your interest in our research, and hope you will look to our published article.